name is Rick Vazza, and this is the Drive podcast. We'll be talking about business and investing, particularly entrepreneurship through acquisition in today's topic. My ask of you is if you get any value from this, it's a newer podcast, please share it out, help us grow the message as we want to obviously get this in front of as many people that will find it useful as possible. Today I'm joined again by the man, the myth, the legend, John Padilla. He is going to be talking through his experience as we went through me buying the company from him that he had spent 10 years building. And so today, primarily want to talk about that initial phase. So when we both identified me that I wanted to buy the company, you that you wanted to sell, what happens next? It's a question I get a lot from people, how do you even get started? So what I thought would be helpful, why don't you start, just talk about how you got ready for that huge transition in your life and phase, and then I'll kind of give the buyer's perspective.
We felt that the broker that we chose was more interested than the other brokers and had more of a feel, especially in the city of National City, because we were hoping to move to that location in that area, and he had some buildings and things that were available for us. So,
okay, that's helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, and admittedly, I mean, when that happens, you're kind of driving by a few times, phantom vehicle, just checking things out, like, can I see myself here? And and it's a very daunting and intimidating process for sure, especially if it's your first time going through it. But I think at the end of the day, ultimately, you're realizing, hey, is this someone who, in our case, which was going to be unique, where we were going to continue working together, is that going to be possible? And I think, as I mentioned previously, like, hi, welcome. My name is Rick Vazza, and this is the Drive podcast. We'll be talking about business and investing, particularly entrepreneurship through acquisition in today's topic. My ask of you is if you get any value from this, it's a newer podcast, please share it out, help us grow the message as we want to obviously get this in front of as many people that will find it useful as possible. Today I'm joined again by the man, the myth, the legend, John Padilla. He is going to be talking through his experience as we went through me buying the company from him that he had spent 10 years building. And so today, primarily want to talk about that initial phase. So when we both identified me that I wanted to buy the company, you that you wanted to sell, what happens next? It's a question I get a lot from people, how do you even get started? So what I thought would be helpful, why don't you start, just talk about how you got ready for that huge transition in your life and phase, and then I'll kind of give the buyer's perspective.
Sure, yeah. Once we decided to make go ahead and make the change, sell the business, that, we had to go find a broker, so, we started researching brokers, and we found one that we felt would be a fit for us, so we went out into the market, and then, we thought, okay, he's going to take care of everything, he's going to do it all. But the next thing I know is that we have to come up with, profit and loss statements. There were so many documents that we had to produce that it created a lot of work and stress. Mm-hmm. But, that's part of the process. And, getting that accomplished to be able to sell your company, to make it attractive, have all this ready, and we felt comfortable, providing all that information, mm-hmm. Since we were pretty successful. But it was a lot of information. It was, a lot of people coming by, having to set up appointments. Again, the profit and loss documents were the most important part of it, the accounting part of the business, of course. And having to get all that ready was really, really difficult.
Do you remember how many brokers you spoke with by chance?
We spoke to about 6.
How did you make the decision? What was it? I'd be curious to, what stood out from Dylan amongst maybe the rest of the crowd who you ended up ultimately utilizing?
We felt that the broker that we chose was more interested than the other brokers and had more of a feel, especially in the city of National City, because we were hoping to move to that location in that area, and he had some buildings and things that were available for us. So,
okay, that's helpful.
Yes.
And was it his the questions that he would ask that suggested that he was more interested, I would imagine, just like the way he went about it?
The way he went about it, the way he was always on top of it, the way he was always calling us, sending us emails, constant communication. So we knew he was, really taking care of our situation.
That's great because I just know so many. It's like, with real estate agents, right? You have so many choices to pick from at this. But it's such a crucial decision, to shepherd that through. And then I think John highlighted obviously a really important point. So since then, I've acquired another business, and the financials is so important. So if you are in the seller's seat and you're thinking about potentially, bringing your business to market, it is really imperative that you have good, proper bookkeeping put together. All of your tax returns, everything's up to date and filed correctly, because those are some of the big things that are going to be asked for. And so really that's kind of like your first job, right? Is getting all of that stuff squared away to make the process a little bit easier. Is that a fair statement?
It was our homework, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And homework for you, and you guys were already pretty dialed in. So there's probably some people who, this is going to be a bit of a journey for, that's probably step one of that process.
Yeah, right? Johnny, much like yourself, he stays on top of that.
Yeah, he was very organized.
He was really, really organized. His office wasn't so much, but yeah, his books were really organized. Yeah, you're very similar to that way.
Our office could use a cleanup.
Yes.
/ storage facility.
I'll remind you again.
So I like that. So you pick the broker, they help you bring this to market. What type of expectation setting do they have? I'm always curious with that, because that's, from the buyer's perspective, it's always helpful to know what is the sellers coming to the table expecting, what expectations have been set, what are those conversations that you've had up to that point?
Trying to establish, what the company was worth, looking at the overall market and what other companies were going for, trying to highlight what made our company, more valuable. And those were the hurdles that we had to get over.
That's important information. So just so the audience can know. So one of the acquisitions, obviously the one from John that we went through, was facilitated by a broker. And then the other one that I went through was actually no broker involved. So that was a off-market deal, if you will. And from the buyer's perspective, they're very different conversations, right? Because when the broker is involved, some of those expectations have already been set. All that information is typically already gathered, so it's a little bit more of a streamlined process. Whereas if you're going off market, you may be able to facilitate a price. It's really how well you can negotiate at that point. But you do also have to do a lot of education. So when I went through the second time, it was explaining, hey, this, like, you're the broker in that instance. This is how it typically works. These are these are typically trading, and you're really obviously needing trust to be built that they are agreeing with what you're saying.
Exactly.
But it was totally different perspectives for me as the buyer. So I was just curious from the broker's perspective. So the broker sets the expectations, and then they say, I'm going to blast this out to the different websites, my network. Is that kind of the next thing after that of just, we'll see what happens and who comes to us with interest?
So yeah, we, he set out the word, and we immediately got interest. There's people wanting to buy companies all the time, it seems, So we had immediate interest, and, we felt good about that, so people were starting to come in and started to come in. You inventory everything that you have, your vehicles, everything that you own, so you know what you have. And, that's really important, a number as well. So, we continued, and they kept coming and kept coming. Great offers, but people that we didn't feel comfortable with, so we said, no, thank you. We'd go on to the next one. The broker looked at us like we're crazy. Yeah. But, there was, that was what we wanted. And we never really discussed that with the broker.
Okay.
Mostly with the broker was, you facilitate selling this.
Okay.
And that was it, the rest of it was us.
That's a really interesting perspective, though. That's good to know. So then I'll give some detail from the buyer's perspective. So basically, at my point in the journey, I had been doing my financial planning business, had been doing some small business consulting as a byproduct of that, and then wanted to ultimately venture to frankly, as I tell everyone, the other side of the table, if you will. So from the buyer's perspective, it was kind of similar, but the opposite. You basically are looking at those different websites, or you're reaching out to brokers or CPAs, all the people that you expect business owners to be making contact with. And you're basically just telling them, hey, I'm interested in making an acquisition. To John's point, they look at me like I'm 15 years old and laugh at me, and then I have to say, no, take me seriously, and give a bit of context around my background and my resume and those types of things. And then they go, oh, okay, maybe you are more serious than we initially thought. And then you fill out the typically your information. They'll have you sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then that's at that point where you actually get your hands on the financials. And that to me is a really fun part of the process. I looked at probably a dozen different businesses before John and I were finally introduced, and I love that. It's you get to see how businesses work, and I think that's really fun. But what then ended up happening was the broker that John is alluding to reached out and said, "Hey, this is a business that matches your criteria," and then at that point he puts us into contact. And so we're really then more or less in the driver's seat at that point. It was, I think we were just introduced via email.
Yes.
And then we started with initially a sit-down meeting, initially a phone meeting. That's more common. You'll do typically a phone meeting. Probably John's thinking, can I stand dealing with this guy for 5 minutes on the phone? And then at that point, you pass the initial screening test to actually have a sit-down meeting. And that was when me, you, and Johnny had that first meeting. So then from the meeting, I know my fears coming into it, so I'll let you go first. But so what are you guys thinking? You're having this initial sit-down meeting, and we were at the office after hours because you want everyone to be gone.
Yes.
And then what's the thought process there?
It was fortunate enough that we had a lot of practice before you got there because we had a lot of people coming in. But getting to meet the potential buyer was really, really important. Again, knowing what kind of person this was he a caring person? Did he really not care about anybody or anything? Was he just buying it to sell it? We wanted to know, and they didn't meet the criteria, and fortunately you did.
Thank you. No, that's helpful. But I hope you can see too, as a potential buyer, I mean, frankly, I was in no position to be the buyer of choice. And, that interview, and really that is what it was, right? I'm basically interviewing to John as not being his employee, but as a potential acquirer, and really showcasing why I would be a good investment is really kind of how it played out, right? And so from my perspective, it's terrifying, right? Because I did not have that practice. This is my first one coming in. Like, I remember being concerned, am I dressed the right way? Because this is a blue collar profession. I'm coming from white collar, and I'm like, do I wear jeans? Do I wear, you're overthinking everything, right? And at the end of the day, we're just two people who are there to have a conversation and see if it works out. But I would say I liked the ability to come into the warehouse and the shop, because obviously it's helpful because it's your guys' home territory. But obviously then I get to see like, well, what am I, what is here? And that was really valuable. I have done it. As I said, the second one, we did it at like a lunch place just because, again, I'm trying to get away from the team. And I did not think that was great. In hindsight, I think it's always better if you can to negotiate that. Let's do the interview at the shop.
Yeah, and if I recall, I think you came in once in the morning where everybody was, getting ready to go. You were kind of watching the operation to see how everything went. And, it was, I think that was an excellent observation on your point to do so. To see how does it actually run? Mm-hmm. We talked a great game. We were set up. We had great dispatching. We had everything going well, and we can talk all about it. But actually seeing it, I thought, if you're a buyer, why aren't you coming in to see that? I think that was important for you to do so.
Yeah, and admittedly, I mean, when that happens, you're kind of driving by a few times, phantom vehicle, just checking things out. Like, can I see myself here? And yeah, and it's a very daunting and intimidating process for sure, especially if it's your first time going through it. But I think at the end of the day, ultimately, you're realizing, hey, is this someone who, in our case, which was going to be unique, where we were going to continue working together, is that going to be possible? And I think, as I mentioned previously, like for me, it was really seeing the care that John had for his team, because I hadn't been able to meet with the team. That's not common that you would do that, especially in the trades. And so really thinking, okay, obviously the financials make sense because I can see the numbers and they match the tax returns, all of that type of stuff. So I know that this is a healthy business, but do I also know that the culture is going to match and be one that I think I can be a part of, frankly? And you're really relying on the steward of the business, in this case, John and Johnny, and getting a sense from them. Do they have good ethics? And actually, I'll give an example. I've since met with, so I've said I've acquired one more, but I've met with several others. And in those, there's two that particularly stand out that I'll tell a story. So one, we're going through the financials, and at the bottom there's a separate line item, and I'm like, well, what's this line item? And those are my C notes. Your C notes? What's this? That's the cash that I don't. So of course, that doesn't get probably reported to, I don't know if it does or doesn't. I'm not throwing anyone into those, but yeah, I'm assuming he wants me to pay for it. And I was like, that's an ethical violation right away I'm not dealing with, right? Because if it starts there, you kind of have an assumption that it flows down. So
and it will.
And it will, yeah, right, of course. And then the other one, met with someone and they had a key employee that was off the books, and same thing. It's like this. So anyways, my point in these two examples is you're really assessing the ethics and the sustainability, frankly, because those things will eventually catch up to these people, of the practices that are in place. And obviously when I met John and Johnny, their ethics were sound and their reputations preceded them. So you're basically just, do the reputations match what I'm seeing here? And the answer was of course yes, and made us feel comfortable moving forward.
Yeah, it was an important factor, and I was an investigator for the State Contractors Board for 10 years, so I went out and looked at met with a lot of contractors. So seeing the ethical part of business and the non-ethical part of business, I was very much aware of that. And if you get involved with that part of it, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's a slippery slope. And I know we talk about it with the team all the time, but I mean, the nice thing about plumbing is, we are in a business where people need us, and there's a demand there that, like, as long as you do the right thing and stand by it, you're going to be, more or less successful. Like, it's, the demand is there. So just do the right thing. Don't take advantage of people, and business should in theory continue coming.
Just take care of the consumer.
Yeah,
and that's all.
But it's unfortunate because it can be easy for people to take the shortcut. And this, funny enough, I talk about the similarities of finance all the time, but you hear all these financial fraud issues and the same type of thing. It's so easy to take these shortcuts in these professions because of the jargon, the intimidation factor. No one wants to feel stupid about their money the same way no one wants to feel stupid about their home. Mm-hmm. And it's a slippery slope, because once someone does it that first time, it's it usually gets worse and easier to repeat. So anyways, kind of a tangent here, but to the potential buyers, I think what you're really looking for is, does the person that I'm sitting across the table from have the ethics? Because more likely than not, that's transferring over to the team. And exactly. that was what I found to be the case.
Exactly. So, as you got to meet our team, I think you realized that as well.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say about, like, even just the acquisition process, because some people have always asked me, well, what if I just had a bunch of money, why don't I just go start this myself? Well, one, you haven't heard the horror stories of John starting it. But the other thing is, how many potential employees and employee issues did you guys go through to get to the great crop of people then that I was fortunate to inherit? Right. And that's a hard thing to put a value on, right? You went through all of these different trials and tribulations with various people. And really what I inherited was an amazing batch of top talent that had been with you guys for quite some time, many of which are, majority of which are still with us today, which is really exciting.
Another interesting thing about that is these are all people that I've known for even longer. They were working for other companies. The plumbing industry is a large industry, but actually small.
Everyone knows each other.
Yes, everybody knows each other. Not a lot of new plumbers coming up. People are going to college instead of learning a trade. So, you get to know everybody. And
great point. Yeah,
it's important to have.
Yeah, well, I think that's been helpful. Hopefully, that's helpful to potential viewers to kind of hear the different perspectives. So. Let's go into, all right, so after the sale, we go through day one, because I always think this is hilarious. So basically, John and I come to agreement with, the transaction. We end up starting officially January 1st because of the way the holiday was. We thought that would be more practical. And you want to give color into that first day?
Well, I mean, you didn't see our side. I mean, I was sweating bullets, because we sold the company. And I had to come in and tell everybody, tell the guys, tell people that were depending on me, that I made sure that they had food on the table for all these years. And I go, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? You came in, we were having a little brief meeting, and I go, gentlemen, I have to make an announcement. It's actually a good announcement, and we have sold the company. And the looks were incredible. They all looked at me. Now, I did take my senior guys into the office before all this, and I met with them individually, even with their wives, and told them what was going on. We told the rest of the company that morning that you were there. And what we talked about the most, even during that meeting, was the fact that we felt that we took the company as far as we possibly could, and it needed another perspective. It needed another, way of looking at things. And I told them, you have no plumbing background, but your financial background, I think, is essential for this, to make it work. And that's what's happened. I mean, it's incredible how far we've gone in these few years, So, but that initial meeting was as scary as can possibly be, and the looks on their faces were.
I still remember Javi's today, where he just put his hood up. Like Javi's one of our awesome guys, but he was definitely very skeptical.
He was very skeptical. I mean, they were all
skeptical. I just remember him specifically. That still makes me laugh. So from my perspective, it was really funny too, because I mean, I talked about being scared before our even first meeting, but you talk about scared coming into this, and you're just like, oh God. So we come in, and of course, John says all this, and initial reaction is more confusion than anything. Yes. And guys like, oh, so he's like now our CFO, or like what?
I remember that
because you talked about my financial background. Yes. I'm like, oh, so he's the CFO, and John's like, no, he's going to be taking over, and they're just like, what? Like
the new owner?
Yeah, and so anyways, it's so that period is really a challenging thing, because you have your 30 seconds to make a speech and hopefully have people think like, I'm gonna give this guy a shot. And I think to John's point before, having you involved was everything, because it's what I was able to say is like, hey guys, and it's just the truth. Like, my job here is just to kind of monitor things and get to know you all, ask questions. Obviously, I had my notepad out, and I'm just reviewing everything when I'm meeting with everyone. But John's still here, and I'm going to be kind of learning, and just being honest. And thankfully, I just asked, give me at least 6 months, and if I suck by then, that's on me. But guys, at least gave me that chance. Everyone except for one, which the apprentice, the second day, which was interesting. But otherwise, they at least gave it to me, and I think that was a testament to the trust and the fortitude of the relationships that you had built with them. I really can't speak enough of that. I don't
we did tell them as well, that you had the same frame of mind about taking care of employees the way we did, and that was one of the factors that we waited for. We had a lot of other people, and when we told them this, I think that really calmed them down some. We had questions for months and months after that, but they got to see that it wasn't going to be a big change. Mm-hmm. They got to see that I was going to still be around, so they could still come to me and talk to me. And I think that was a comfort level that they needed at that point.
I think too, and I don't know how you did this, because this is something I've always had such appreciation for. So John mentioned his still ability to be around and guys to still come to him, which they did. I mean, initially especially, that they're like, who was I? I was nobody at that point, and they would still come to him, and you, out of all respect that you had, you would say, you got to go talk to Rick about that. And that was probably a bit of a weird change for you, because you're used to just giving an answer and then that happens, and now you're like, well, I'm going to reshuffle you over. Now, some things are probably great to redirect me to.
A weird change for me, but as well a weird change for them. That was the difficult part for them. But they started to go over and talk to you. You treated them with respect, and I think that's really a really important factor. Always treat your employees with respect, mm-hmm. and that in itself gained a lot of trust in you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's hopefully important for viewers to see, is because, John was talking about the success that we've had, but it's really been a team effort. I mean, mm-hmm. like we always talk about, our best ideas come from the field, and they're giving us ideas. And honestly, one of the most overwhelming things as a business owner is you get such good ideas, and then you feel guilty because you can't implement them because you're doing 1,000 things at once. That's even a career, personal growth thing I need to get better at, is just even managing some of the input that comes in. But really what we've been able to figure out is, how do we win together? And we don't have any selfishness, and I know I alluded to this before, but I think coming top down, when you see the help that you're giving to everyone and supporting them, and then that trickles down to the senior guys, and there really is this culture of support. I think that's everything. Really.
I think we have an interesting culture of a team management. And then and then the guys, and they really like that, that we kind of communicate between each other and make decisions rather than just one person making that decision. except for when it comes to certain points of the business.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's definitely the case, which I think has been, as we've gone through this journey now, we've expanded, we've added a lot of people. We've definitely improved some like we talked about our apprentice program improving. I think from the pipeline of talent too, we've really come a long ways of just like what our expectations are as a company. And really, I would say to those of you potentially buying companies, if you're looking for ways to have the previous owner involved, I can't speak highly enough about my experience with John, but we've talked about a lot of the things that he's really spearheaded and led. And I think it was funny when we went through that first change, I just came to you and I said, what would make you want to still be here, right? I think that's exactly how I framed it. And, your love for teaching was really apparent, and you really took pride in that. And so we're like, let's lean into that, And I think that's kind of where we started, right? And
yes, it was. And then plus the fact that you agreed to, have me work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, so I can go fishing on Wednesday. So that was important.
I probably also need to give a plug to Jill, because I think she also helps. Like, you need to be out of the house.
That helps, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope this was valuable. I had a lot of fun with you, John. Hopefully we can do more of these. If it was valuable for you and you're watching, again, please help us by sharing this out. You can do the subscribe, the like, and all that good stuff. If you do want to reach out, feel free to drop a comment. We would love to answer questions and do another episode that we'll source some questions from the comments here. If you want to reach out to me directly, I'm at Rick Vazza on Twitter, and then you can also find us at John Padilla Plumbing here in San Diego.